Memphis rapper Young Dolph once said, if it ain't one thing, it's another. Ja Morant got going. But what happened to Luke Kennard? The Grizzlies got off to a good start after getting off to a bad start against the Lakers. But what happened in the second quarter? We got to talk about it. Coming up on Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am Damichael Cole, your host today. Locked On Grizzlies, going solo without my co-host Joe Mullinax. So appreciate you guys for tuning in with me on today's edition of Locked On Grizzlies as we break down this Grizzlies Celtics game and a lot more, including some of the things that I talked about in the opening, and also preview this upcoming game against the Golden State Warriors, which is really going to be a big one now. As we'll find out more of why that is the case in this episode. But thank you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies with me. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Remember that your favorite podcast also now has a newsletter. Introducing the Locked On Grizzlies daily newsletter. Is the one-stop ultimate team and league coverage delivered right into your inbox. Sign up for free now at lockedondaily.com. That's lockedondaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Grizzlies newsletter. Shout out to my co-host Joe Mullinax. He's been manning the newsletter for us, and he's doing great work over there. Make sure you guys continue to tune in to what we got going on with the Locked On Grizzlies newsletter. But what about what's going on with the Memphis Grizzlies? It's a lot. A game against the Boston Celtics on yesterday, a 117-103 loss. A lot of things to take away from that game. As we talk about in this episode, we're going to break down the game in the first segment. We're going to talk about finding a balance. That's kind of what I touched on a little bit in the opening, but we're going to go deeper into the subject of how the Grizzlies need to strike a balance here. Then we're going to preview this upcoming game against the Golden State Warriors in the third and final segment. But get into this Grizzlies Celtics recap. So you play against, the Lakers, and you get off to the slow start, and the Grizzlies, you could tell. I mean, even Tomas Isalo, the interim coach, pointed it out himself, said, guys were really locked in at the beginning. I mean, the Grizzlies were humming on defense. And he pointed out the fact that even over the course of the game, like if you look at it, I think the Celtics had somewhere around 25 points in three different quarters. And then it was the one quarter. It's almost every game. It's one quarter that tends to stick out like a sore thumb. Look at the Celtics points per quarter. In the first quarter, they had 25. In the third quarter, they had 26. In the fourth quarter, they had 25. All very respectable numbers to hold the Boston Celtics to. You hold them to 25, 26 points in the quarter. You got a really good chance at winning. But then there's that second quarter. Boston had 41 points in the second quarter, and that's pretty much all she wrote, because the Grizzlies had a 7-point lead at the end of the first, and just like that, I mean, the game flipped. Boston outscored the Grizzlies 41-29, in the second quarter, which led to a 5-point lead at the halftime. I think it was 66-61. So they end up still putting up 66 points in the first half, even after they only scored 25 in the first quarter. This is not a new problem, and it's one where it's hard for me to figure out, like, what is really going on. This team cannot sustain long stretches of play where they're playing really good defensively. I mean, that first quarter, you go put it on. That's teach tape. And even in the second half, for large stretches, they looked like that. But it's that one quarter in the second quarter, they looked bad. And then you say, oh, okay, they just got to fix the second quarter things. Well, guess what? You go back a game earlier, boom, the Lakers hit them in the first quarter. And then in the second quarter, they tightened up. So I don't know if it's, you just can't be reactionary. It's the only thing that I can think of. Right? Like you need to stay on the hunt regardless. You want to come out on the hunt, you got to stay aggressive. And I don't get the sense that this team is kind of intentionally, like, like it's nothing like that. they are very in tune to what's going on. Taylor Jenkins, again, when he was here, he talked about it, bleeding points in certain quarters. That was something that he was talking about. The players were very knowledgeable of the fact that they had those quarters, those lulls. So it's honestly just a very puzzling part to this team is figuring out how they have those stretches where they look like an elite defense, and then they turn around and have a stretch where they look like one of the worst defenses in the league. And we saw both in this game against the Celtics, but we're not seeing enough of the great defense, which is why they're losing a lot of these games. But they're in them, they're in the game, right? The Celtics didn't really pull away in this one. Like the score 117-103 makes it seem like they were in much more control than they actually were. And they were in control, but it was a close game pretty much until the fourth quarter. Celtics going to run, they open the game up, and the Grizzlies playing from behind, and that's all she wrote, in this case. We talked about it before the show too. Another thing that I wanted to point out, and it would be interesting to see how this play out, because I thought this would be a good example of determining how much is Isalo kind of incorporating his own thing and how much is he taking away from Taylor Jenkins. So Drew Holiday, right? Drew Holiday has not been guarded by other teams the way that the Grizzlies guard him. The Grizzlies put a big on Drew Holiday, and they basically dare him to shoot. So when he drives against those bigs, he's driving into a lot of sides, which makes it tough for him to finish around the rim. So you're basically making him shoot a lot of three-pointers. And we talked about in that last meeting how Drew Holiday shot, I think it was 4 of 17 on three-pointers. Well, he made 4 three-pointers again, but it was only 6 attempts. The Grizzlies did start off with a similar, kind of a similar mentality in terms of guarding him, and he missed a couple earlier. But when he started making, he started making, and he finished the night. I think he had 18 points, 7 assists, made 4 threes, and it was tough after that, and because you couldn't really sag off of him. You can't sag off of Kristaps Porzingis. The Grizzlies gave up some open looks just because we've seen it, right? These defensive breakdowns that they have. They gave up some open looks that way, but from a KYP standpoint, know your personnel. They allowed Xavier Tillman to shoot, old friend of the program, old Grizzlies player, Xavier Tillman Sr. They allowed him to shoot, which was a good idea. 0-5 from three-point range. He started this game actually, pretty much because he was going against the Grizzlies. Joe Mazzulla was a really, really good guy, really nice guy. Wanted to put Xavier Tillman on the floor as he was going against his old team. But anyways, Xavier Tillman Sr. couldn't make a three-pointer against the Grizzlies. He couldn't buy one. The idea was to guard Drew Holiday in a similar way. Didn't work. So Isalo basically adjusted after that, and I thought he adjusted fine. Again, we just touched on it. If you take away the second quarter is the quarter where, Al Horford was probably the problem too. He blitzed them. Al Horford made 6 3-pointers. It was funny to see, well, it wasn't funny probably to most of the fans, but like Xavier Tillman goes out of the game, Al Horford comes in, and Al Horford is just spraying it from 3-point range, and the Grizzlies kind of were guarding, Al Horford like he was Xavier Tillman at first, and they had to realize like this ain't Xavier Tillman Sr. But those were a couple of the notable takeaways from this game. Jaren Jackson Jr. did finish with 20 points. He grabbed 15 rebounds. Look, good to see Jaren, get a double-double, get 15 rebounds and all that, but all of them were defensive rebounds, and the Celtics shoot a lot of three-pointers, so you got a lot of long misses or whatever the case may be. So it's impressive, but still, it's not like 5 of them were offensive rebounds or something. Like a lot of times we see Zach Edey get double-digit rebounds. It's a good mix of defensive and offensive rebounds. So, look, the ball found Jaren Jackson Jr. a lot in this game. John Morant led the way with 26 points. He got 21 off the bench from Santi Aldama, 3 of 12 from three-point range. I think that's what people are going to focus more on from his performance. He was 8 of 18 overall. The bench, not a lot for the bench, but we'll talk about that a little bit more in our next segment. Jason Tatum had 25 points, 14 rebounds. And we mentioned Al Horford knocking down 6 threes. He led the Celtics with 26 points. The Celtics got big nights from the guards. Derek White wasn't really making a lot of three-pointers. Jason Tatum wasn't really making a lot of three-pointers. But those guys find other ways to be effective. Derek White had 14 points, 10 assists, and 8 boards. Jason Tatum, 14 rebounds. He had a block, a couple assists as well. That's what it comes down to. How can you still be effective when you don't have your A game or when your shot isn't falling and things like that? And Celtics players definitely found ways to stay effective in this game. How can some Grizzlies players stay effective? That's a big question. The Grizzlies need to find a balance going forward. We're going to talk about that next here on Locked on Grizzlies. But before we talk to that, this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Look, you ever check your bank account and wonder, like, where did all my money go? Between eating out or going shopping, online shopping, or you at the mall or something, entertainment, it's easy to lose track of where your money's going. And that's where Monarch Money is really going to come in handy for you, because your personal accounts is giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money it isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center, so you can track all your accounts, investments, spending in one place, so you can stop just managing your money and you can actually start building wealth. Look, and they also have some surprising insights. So look, when I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food deliveries, like paying all those extra fees. But now I budget smarter because of Monarch Money, and I save more money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money right now. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Go take advantage of that now at monarchmoney.com. This episode is also brought to you by Prizepicks. Look, Prizepicks is simply the best option out there for you right now, because baseball is in full swing and there's no better way to get into action than with Prizepicks. It's the best daily fantasy sports option there is. And with Prizepicks, it's simple. You pick more or less on at least 2 players' projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. So it could be strikeouts, it could be RBIs, it could be first inning runs, which is one I like to get in on the first inning runs, because I want to know if I'm going to win very early on in the day, and then that'll determine how much I'll play the rest of the day. But first inning runs, Prizepicks keeps every game exciting. There's so many ways you can get involved. It's fast and simple. Look, setting the lineup, it takes less than 60 seconds. And when you win, your payout is quick, it's safe, and it's secure. You also get some exclusive promos. I always take advantage of Taco Tuesday, where Prizepicks offers discounts on select player projections for even more value. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Locked On NBA for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks, run your game now. Coming up here on Locked On Grizzlies, we got to talk about finding the balance. How can the Grizzlies find a balance right now? And look, they have a lot of problems, right? Like, the Grizzlies have a lot of problems right now. I don't want to, overlook any of those problems. Like, this team is struggling, but in order for them to kind of find their way, these are some of the issues that need to be corrected. And let's talk about finding the balance, because one thing I've noticed since Isolo has taken over, and this was something I was paying attention to early on, because we saw, like he said, there's going to be a increased emphasis on featuring the key guys more. That's great. John Morant has to be featured in the Grizzlies offense. Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., those guys got to be featured. They're really good players. 2 of them have been to multiple All-Star games. Like, they got to be featured. So lately, we're seeing John Morant be featured more in the offense, and he is thriving, right? 26 points, 10 of 20 shooting, from the field against a really good Celtics defense. Like, hey, they made him work for it. Knocked down a couple threes, 6 rebounds, 5 assists. John had to earn it. Jaren Jackson Jr., 8 of 16 shooting from the field, 3 of 6 on 3-pointers. Same thing, 20 points, 15 boards. But what happened to the bench? What's going on with Luke Kennard? Like Scottie Pippen just had an off night. He was 2 of 8, 0 for 4 from the field. He's been playing solidly. Vince Williams struggling. Luke Kennard, 0 of 1 shooting from the field. Now you got 2 consecutive games. 2 games in a row where Luke Kennard has played over 18 minutes, and he's got 1 combined shot over the course of those 2 games. And, I get it's frustrating because, we asked him about it, and I get he doesn't want to, talk about that much. This is for the people. I just want to, point out to the people that say, "Oh, you guys don't always ask the tough questions, man." I everything that people want to be asked, 9 times out of 10, you just don't go listen because tend to ask those questions. But anyways, that's either here or there. So we asked Luke Kennard, "Why aren't you getting shots up?" And he basically said, "I just gotta stay aggressive." That's what you expect him to say. But I've always, had this eye test thing. You just watch Luke Kennard play, and you see it. It's as simple as he's not getting looks, and he's not a creator. And shout out to my co-host, Joe Mullinax. He loves to say Luke Kennard's one of the best shooters he's ever seen. I describe it as Luke Kennard's one of the most accurate shooters I've ever seen. It's a little tweak there. There's a little tweak between best and accurate. He's one of the most accurate, but the best shooters are the ones who can create space, who can shoot off the dribble, who can shoot spot up, catch and shoot, however you want to do it. Luke Kennard can give you the spot up shots. He can give you the catch and shoot. How many times do you see Luke Kennard with a guy in front of him step back, behind the back, creating for a 3-point shot? That's what the Desmond Bains are better at. The Steph Currys are better at. So it's a difference. And that's kind of where I'm at. But how that pertains to the finding a balance part of this is when the Grizzlies had their old offense, right? And I won't call it old because they're still running a lot of it now, but they're just emphasizing more pick and roll. But the offense that, when Taylor Jenkins was head coach, was more centered on like a lot of guys touching the basketball, a lot of movement, cutting and things like that. And Luke Kennard, even though he did have some games like this where he only took a couple shots here and there, but for the most part, he was one of the players who benefited from that offense. We talked about how he benefited. We talked about how Santi Aldama benefited. Now you're seeing those guys who directly benefited from the previous offense kind of have to find their way as the team is starting to go more with ball screens and whatnot. So that is something that I'm going to be watching over, the next few games. Like, how are the Grizzlies going to find that balance between those players? So the other one is the bigs. There is no consistency right now in the big man rotation. And, it's too late in the season for that. Like, what you're going to get from Jaren Jackson Jr., unless he's in foul trouble, whatever the case may be. But Santi Aldama led the Grizzlies bigs in minutes. He led the Grizzlies, period. Santi Aldama led the Grizzlies in minutes played in this game. And he came off the bench. How did he lead the Grizzlies in minutes played? Well, Zach Edey, who started this game, the Celtics hit a few 3-pointers where Zach Edey was the closest defender. And they put him in some ball screen actions or whatever the case may be. I know Derek White, had a switch one time with Zach Edey on him, had him on the perimeter, and he said, "Oh, this is honey baked ham. I'm just gonna shoot it right over the top of him, easy, comfortable shot, knocked it down." So there were a few of those, but if you look at the box score, it's not like Zach Edey was some minus 20 and the other guys were, like plus 15 or something like that. That wasn't the case. Like, just simply by plus minus, he was not a big negative. But when you look at the game, he struggled a little bit on the perimeter at times. So they go to Marvin Bagley for a little bit. He ends up playing like 12 minutes. Santi plays a big chunk of minutes. J Huff got some playing time. Like, there is no continuity in the big man rotation right now. None whatsoever. And you need that. Like, I get it. I'm very big on matchups, and I know I said it at the beginning of the season. One of the great things about having depth is having the ability to, this guy's a bad matchup this night, let's go here. This guy's a bad matchup that night, let's go there. But from the Grizzlies standpoint, there's not really much continuity in the front court. You can go into any game. I mean, we're talking about 3 games ago, and I am going back to when Taylor Jenkins was coach, so I know it's different now. But you're talking about 3 games ago where Zach Edey was coming off the bench. Jay Huff was the first reserve, and now Jay Huff's barely playing, and Zach Edey's back in the starting lineup, and Santi is now playing 35 minutes in this game. So it's just so many moving parts. It's hard to get that continuity, and continuity is going to be big for this team down the stretch as they kind of start to round into some type of form, right? Like that is a part of these struggles to me. There is no continuity. There is no continuity in knowing these are our guys. These is our 8 or 9 players. We're gonna play every single night, and this is who we're gonna ride with. You don't know right now with the Grizzlies. Like Santi just played the most minutes. I mean, tomorrow it might be Ja, it might be Dez, it might be you just never know. That's kind of what it feels like right now with this team. Coming up in the next segment, we got to talk about tonight. A big game against the Golden State Warriors. The Grizzlies may be in the danger zone right now. We're going to talk about that coming up here on Locked On Grizzlies. But before we get to that, remember that today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Look, if there's a live event out there, because look, to me, there's not anything like watching basketball. I like to watch basketball live, the energy of the crowd, sound of the sneakers, even if it's a game like these last couple where you got, the Lakers fans and the Celtics fans kind of invading FedEx Forum. But you get some celebrity sightings courtside, whatever it is. If you want to catch a game in person, Gametime makes getting tickets easier than ever. Gametime has this new feature. Some of you have heard of it by now. It's called Gametime Picks, where it filters out the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats. So you don't got to waste your time scrolling through all these tickets trying to find the best deal. It's simple. With Gametime Picks, it takes out all the fluff for you. So you get super deals where Gametime Picks highlights the deals. It's telling you where you can get the best bang for your buck. Then you get a peace of mind, which is so important to somebody like me, because with seat views before you buy, there are no surprise fees, and you get the lowest price guaranteed, so you can book with total confidence. So you say, okay, what do I got to do now? Well, it's simple. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today, because what time is it? It's game time. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies, and we're going to break down this last game of this 3-game stretch of teams where you got these big, huge national fan bases that are kind of invading the FedEx Forum, right? First it was the Lakers, then it was the Celtics, and then you got the Warriors. But this game is a big game for way more reasons than who's going to be at the game, so to speak. The Grizzlies now are clinging onto that 5th spot. You're a half game in front of the Golden State Warriors. If Golden State wins this game, they take the season series. Grizzlies win, you tie the season series. Right now, it's typical. They play 3 games. Golden State's won their home games. The Grizzlies won their home games, so it's 2-1. But if the Grizzlies win, it's 2-2. Warriors win, they get the season series, and they have the tiebreaker. So this is a big one. Now, look, it's not even just because of the Warriors. The Grizzlies are only 1 game up in the loss column now on the Clippers and the Timberwolves. We already know that the Clippers have the regular season tiebreaker over the Grizzlies as well. So many things in terms of from a standing standpoint of why this game is a big deal. Right, we just touched on it. Like the Grizzlies are in danger of not only falling from the 5th spot, they're in danger of falling into the play-in. They've already clinched the spot in the postseason. They're going to be playing in the postseason in some way, shape, or form. But will they be one of the top 8 seeds in the playoff? There's no guarantee that'll be the case right now. So this is a huge one, and it's always big games against the Warriors for whatever reason. But that's why I think the Grizzlies, they're in the danger zone. Say they're in the danger zone as they enter this game against Golden State. A lot of big factors that come to mind when I think of this matchup. But the number one for me is Zach Edey's got to be a big part of this game. This game is one where Zach Edey can be a big part of it. And here's the thing. Golden State doesn't have great size. That alone should mean Zach Edey should be feasting on the boards. He should have the ability to, dominate this game in stretches. He should have the ability when he gets the ball in the low post, take his time, score. He has a huge size advantage against a smaller Golden State team that's going to put Draymond Green at center, a decent amount in this game. So you got a size advantage there. But it's not only just that. Draymond Green has shot the ball better from three-point range this year. Yes, that is the case. But if Draymond Green beats you from three-point range, I'm willing, whatever. It happens. And Jimmy Butler, great player. He's bringing a lot of things to the Warriors. But one thing Jimmy Butler is not is a great shooter. Not over the course of his career. Now, with the game on the line, put the ball in Jimmy's hands, he tends to make stuff happen. Look, he's a gamer. But at the same time, when you talk about the Grizzlies and the teams that they have success again, we just talked about how they beat the Celtics the first time, not the second time. A guy like Jrue Holiday, who's a great player, he's a great player, and Jimmy Butler is a great player, but they essentially sagged off of Jrue Holiday in that first meet and said, beat us. Not saying I would do that to the same extent against Jimmy Butler, but I would have hey, if you want to shoot a three-pointer, prove it. Okay, you proved it. All right, bet we're gonna guard you there now. So that's kind of the mindset and the mentality. But the point is, that is a favorable look for the Grizzlies in terms of you got Draymond Green, you got Jimmy Butler, two guys that if they get going and they knock down a bunch of three-pointers, so be it. Also, Jalen Wells has been arguably the best defender against Steph Curry this season. One of the worst games of Steph Curry's career was the last time he was in Memphis. Barely scored. Couldn't buy a shot, couldn't make a shot. His last game in Memphis was terrible, and Jalen Wells was a huge part of that. Even when they were playing in Golden State, Jalen Wells did a really good job on Steph Curry. Want to see if that's something that can continue going into this game as well. That's going to be a big part of it. Defensively, Golden State's much better, and that's kind of the thing now. But you know what? They aren't the biggest team, which tends to work out for Ja Morant. Like you look at Ja Morant and how he's scoring, it's pretty much because he's getting to the paint. He knocked down a couple 3-pointers against the Celtics, but he is doing a lot of work in the paint. And if you don't have rim protectors and those type of guys, you're at the mercy of Ja Morant. So the point is, this is a very winnable game just from the outlook of if you look at what the rosters have, you look at what the Grizzlies can do in order to win this game, very winnable game. But there's a mental part of it. And with everything that's been going on, Taylor Jenkins firing, the quick turnaround to play 3 games in 4 days right after that, everything in between that, it's a tough stretch. It's a tough stretch for the Grizzlies. And they need this win. Because if they lose this game, Joe Mullinax is going to be on the next episode, and he's gonna have a lot to say, and it's not going to be good for a team that is really struggling right now, trying to find its way. That's what the Grizzlies are. They're struggling, and as Tomasi Salo keeps saying, there isn't much time. Like, time is not on the Grizzlies side as the playoffs creep up, as the potential play-in, creeps up for this team. So that they got to figure it out, and this Golden State game is the next opportunity for that to happen. Your favorite podcast now has a newsletter introducing the Locked On Grizzlies daily newsletter, the one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right into your inbox. Sign up for free now at lockedondaily.com. That's lockedondaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Grizzlies newsletter. I want to appreciate you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies with me on today. Remember that Locked On Grizzlies is everywhere you get your podcast. Joe Mullinax will be with you on the next episode of Locked On Grizzlies after the game against the Golden State Warriors. Then we'll both be with you after that to talk everything going on with the Grizzlies. But until then, remember, again, Locked On Grizzlies, free and available wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get it. Until next time, I'm Damichael Cole, and we'll see you on Locked On Grizzlies.